There have been lots of more talk about environmental issues ever since those Extinction Rebellion proposals and those protests were taking place. 2 weeks they basically brought an awful lot of London to a standstill. Those finally put paid to those protests last week. But on Sunday we read from Jeremy Corbyn that he would like the government to announce a climate change revolution, a green industrial revolution, and he's called for the government to announce a climate change emergency. Now, he said that on Wednesday there's going to be a vote in the House of Commons that he's going to force, which would actually require that the country acts with urgency to avoid any more global warming than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Apologies. He says it's going to require global emissions to fall by about 45% from 2010 levels by just 2030, just 11 years' time, before reaching net zero emissions before 2050. Now, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Conservative MPs to back the plan or explain why they refuse to do so. This comes, though, after the fracking czar we just spoke to her about half an hour ago, Natasha Engel, quit 7 months into the job as shale gas commissioner, saying that the government was deliberately undermining their own fracking czar because of absolute paralysis and absurd restrictions on drilling. Oh, let's talk about all of this with Donnachadh McCarthy from Extinction Rebellion, that protest group who caused such chaos on the streets of London last week. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Now, it seems to be the case that we are talking more about this issue than we were before, though I have to say, people saying we've got the environmental and green issues on the agenda. I don't know what they've been listening to in the news for the last few years, because it seems to me we talk of nothing else most of the time. But let's talk about what Jeremy Corbyn's going to announce, this idea of a climate emergency. What does that actually mean? What does it involve doing?
Well, it means actually the government actually declaring that the fact that Britain faces an existential threat. The United Nations General Secretary last September said that unless humanity starts radically cutting carbon emissions within the next 18 months, humanity faces extinction. So therefore, government should respond at that level and actually start putting the government's resources and regulations and laws into effect to actually protect Britain from this disaster.
OK. And so, quite apart from the debate about whether or not it is an emergency, I mean, we had a guest on earlier for the Global Warming Policy Foundation, I'm sure a group that you do not agree, I don't see eye to eye on any issue. But talking about actually, when you declare an emergency, you're talking about effectively going on, a police state, a war footing. And many people wouldn't actually think of that. What does it actually mean day to day for ordinary people if we were to try and achieve some of the aims that you have wanted? Now, what the Labour Party talked about is a slower rate of change, but certainly what you were demanding is net zero carbon emissions by 2025. I've yet to find anyone, even in the Green Party, who thinks that is achievable. What sort of measures are we talking about?
Well, actually, we had Tom Burke last night on LBC Radio from the think tank 3EG stating that it was possible and was feasible.
Well, you managed to find one person. Well done.
And so it's actually crucial. We're actually talking about here, if we don't do it, what does
No, I didn't. No. This is the thing. You don't get to choose answering a question I haven't asked. I want to know because we're constantly told the people are very much in favour of this and this needs to be done.
Sure.
What does it actually involve?
Sure, it will actually involve changing almost every aspect of Britain's economy. Such as the food we eat, such as the way we transport, the way we heat our homes, the way we travel, the way we.
And when you say changing, so let's go through those. Let's go through food. What does it change?
Let's say your house. You talked this morning about your central heating.
Love my central heating. I can't. I will fight to the death to save my central heating.
Well, actually,
I'm going to be honest with you.
I think hopefully I may be able to persuade you. You don't have to. You currently have a gas boiler heating your home. Yeah.
Yep.
What this would mean is that gas boiler could be replaced by either an electric small boiler, which is the size of maybe a suitcase, or an air source heat pump, which would still heat your hot water, and you would still have your radiators. How
much would that cost, and who's paying for it?
Roughly around £800 to replace the boiler with an electric boiler, depending on the size of your home. So what we need to do
Who's
is
paying for that?
Well, we've got an industry, finance industry, that's investing $5 trillion in finding new fossil fuels to destroy Britain. If Britain and the government could actually harness that money to invest in Britain's energy efficiency,
well, no, but it's not but that's private money. So you're basically saying we're going to effectively require the energy firms to give us all free boilers, or are you asking us as taxpayers to pay an extra? I've got to be honest with you. I could probably manage the 800 quid. There are a heck of a lot of people listening right now who would struggle for an 800 quid bill to get a new boiler in.
And of course, I mean,
who's paying for theirs then?
Over the last 15 years, Britain has actually invested billions in actually making poorer people's homes more energy efficient, which actually has meant that poorer people have lower bills, which is a win-win. So that's what needs to happen.
All right, let's talk about food.
Sure. And we will have to radically reduce the amount of meat we're eating if we're going to survive.
And how do we do that? Are we telling people they can't buy meat, or we put a tax on it? What are we going to do?
Well, we're going to have to actually encourage farmers to switch from...
encourage farmers or force farmers?
Well, what we're proposing is that we would actually, instead of funding farmers to keep the land destroying nature, we would fund them to help nature. So it's just a different way of spending the money.
Okay, but basically, if we're helping nature, and we're having lovely eco farming, that will cost more. That'd be more for the consumer, though, won't it? The bills would go up. We know organic produce costs more. We know that realistically, we're not going to be able to buy a chicken to roast for £1 at Tesco, are we? So. You're talking about more expensive food for the consumer.
You're right. Organic vegetables cost more than non-organic vegetables. But if we have a lower meat diet, then the cost of food will remain the same. And we have to remember...
Well, hold on a minute. So overall, because we're not going to be able to eat a lot of the things, you're not going to want us to eat them like meat, we're going to spend less. But that's only because we won't be able to afford to eat them.
Well, we're actually saying to the public that if we continue having a high meat diet, our kids will have no food. Because actually, Michael Gove, the government minister, can I explain that?
Can I just say, you absolutely know that's a ridiculous thing to say. And I know most presenters let people get away with this nonsense, but that's simply not a factual statement. You've got no basis for making that statement.
Okay, can I make the basis?
You can try.
Okay, thank you. It's not me who's saying this. Michael Gove, the government's Tory environment minister, has stated that Britain's soils have around 40 years of crops left in them because of the industrial cheap food practices that we've inflicted on them over the last 60 to 100 years. We're killing our soils. If we don't have a live soil, our kids don't have food. It's that simple.
We do have farmers have a really simple way of doing this, of leaving soil, leaving different fields without any crops. I can't remember the terminology, not being in the farming industry. But
it's rotation farming.
Yeah, but it's really not complicated, is it?
No. So therefore, we don't need to destroy our soil.
Exactly. So, and we won't. So people can carry on eating meat, and we won't all starve.
If we carry on eating meat, the planet will get destroyed. We cannot afford...
The planet will get destroyed.
For example, Britain, most of the European cow herd after BSE had to be fed with protein. We used to feed them with bone meal, yeah? Mm-hmm. And then with BSE, we had to find a different way of providing protein for our cows because of our massive meat addiction. And where we found the replacement protein was in from the Amazon soybeans. So we're actually consuming the Amazon, which provides oxygen for our atmosphere, and it actually regulates the climate. If the Amazon goes...
Which the Amazon isn't going to go. But it isn't going to go. Have you been to the Amazon? Do you know how big the Amazon is?
My whole environmental journey started 32 years ago when I actually spent time with the Yanomami Indians and saw the destruction firsthand. It's horrific what's happening there. So I have been there personally 30 years ago, and that's why I'm doing this. But let's get back to what's happening this week.
Let's talk about travel, because that's the other one you mentioned. So presumably we're not going to be able to... I mean, I'm popping off to Lisbon for the weekend. I won't be able to do that, will I?
Not flying, but you would be able to.
Flying? Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure, I'll be able to cycle there for the weekend.
No, but actually people are having holidays across Britain, across Europe, by train. I mean, Greta Thunberg travelled to the meeting in Parliament.
Good for her. How does she get to New York if she's planning to get to New York?
Pardon?
How will she ever get to New York if she plans to go to New York? She'll just have to get on a cruise liner and take 10 days.
There will be some flying, but if we actually... Do you care about what climate change? Do you care about it?
No, I care about the environment. I'm not signed up to, because I've actually looked into this in great detail. I'm not signed up to the idea that the world is all going to collapse and the human race is going to die. I don't believe a lot of the premises. No, human impact on our environment, we should absolutely do our best to tackle. However, it's an environment, it's an economic and a political decision, a lot of it. I don't necessarily think that we should roll back the Industrial Revolution and all the benefits that we brought for mankind around the world so that we can change the temperature of the planet by 0.001 degrees. No, I don't.
No, well,
and I don't think most people are signed up to that.
You are correct. This is a massive political and economic challenge for humanity. But if the United Nations General Secretary is stating the correct on the global science, then we actually have to make the changes required. And it can be a renewable industrial revolution rather than a fossil fuel industrial revolution.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Donnachadh McCarthy, really appreciate joining us. Actually, very nice to speak to someone from Extinction Rebellion who knows his stuff, because the last lady we spoke to from Extinction Rebellion was talking about how we'd all end up being cannibals. And I wasn't sure she helped her cause very well.